He's known in most cities and towns in western Austria, but also in southern Germany, Slovenia, Hungary, Croatia, the Czech Republic, and parts of Italy. He's a demonic-looking creature with curving horns, razor-sharp fangs, red or lime green eyes, cloven hooves, sharp claws, a long red tongue, and a body covered in fur. Chains are wrapped around his waist, and large cowbells or sheep bells hang on his back and ring out through the night, warning of his approach. Worst of all, he carries a bundle of switches, which he uses to beat naughty children and even, occasionally, adults. Of course, I'm talking about the demonic figure known as Krampus. Hi, I'm Tamworth Grice. Welcome to my channel, the Tamworth Grice Files, a place where you'll hear about cases that are spooky, macabre, fascinating, supernatural, and just plain weird. And in each case, I have a personal connection to the story, so be sure to stick around to the end to hear about that. Krampus has been known as a companion to St. Nicholas, the prototype of Santa Claus, perhaps from pre-Christian times, but at least since the 1500s. On December 5th, the day before St. Nicholas Day, Krampus features in parades and other events, sometimes running rampant through towns and entertaining townspeople with their antics. The Krampus characters are typically played by young men and teenage boys, and each has an identifying tag showing that he is approved for the role by the community. The intention is generally to frighten young children into being good, although many say Krampus must beat the bad out of them so that they can receive treats from St. Nicholas and from the Christkind or the Christ child who supernaturally delivers their presents on Christmas. However, the young men and teen boys playing Krampus often aim their bundles of switches at young women and teenage girls or at friends and schoolmates in the crowd. Sometimes the Krampus events will even feature special effects such as colored smoke, music, fireworks, and fire. The following day, St. Nicholas typically appears in the town square, dressed as a Catholic bishop and not as the St. Nicholas figure known to Americans. He distributes treats, usually pieces of hard candy, to all he sees, children and adults alike. They've presumably earned the treats through their encounter with Krampus the night before, so the Krampus figure has somehow taken away their sins. It's worth noting that Krampus is not without controversy. Some believe the figure is too demonic and glorifies Satan and violence against children. In fact, in the 20th century, there were attempts to ban the event. For example, in 1932 in Austria, the pre-Nazi and ultra-religious Fatherland Front prohibited the Krampus festivities, although the ban was later lifted. Then, in the 1950s, the Austrian government declared that Krampus events were too frightening and were bad for children's mental health. But that movement, too, failed, and by the mid-70s, the celebrations re-emerged and are ongoing today every year on December 5th. However, in some towns, rather than running rampant among the townspeople, the Krampus figures parade down the street with barriers or ropes holding back the spectators. And there have been reports of violence in these events that include a Krampus gathering that turned into a brawl involving 50 people, resulting in 8 injuries. Another instance where a 10-year-old child received a bloody cut from being hit too hard with a switch, and yet another instance where Krampus has suffered burns after setting off fireworks. So, what is my personal connection with Krampus? For a while, I was a student in the Overseas Studies program of Northern Illinois University in Salzburg, Austria. One day in early December, my German teacher was explaining in German about Krampus, but my knowledge of the language was weak, and I didn't really know what he was talking about. The next night, I was sitting around in the student lounge with my friends when another American student burst into the room saying, "Guys, you'll never believe this. On the way here, I ran into these dudes dressed in all fur wearing devil masks, and they swatted at me with sticks." About a half hour later, my boyfriend and I headed for the town square. We wanted to buy sausage or pretzel treats from the vendors who were always set up there in the evening. There was also a Christkindl mart, or Christmas market, selling things like ornaments, decorations, candles, snow globes, etc. When we reached the square, we couldn't believe our eyes. The Krampus celebration was in full swing. There were Krampuses everywhere, running rampant through the town. A lot of families had turned out to watch their antics. I noticed that the Krampuses were very careful to only gently touch the children with their switches so as not to frighten them. But the teenage girls and young women weren't so lucky. I got swatted hard enough for it to sting. So, what do you think? Is Krampus a figure of fun, or is he too demonic? Is Krampus too frightening for children? Should the Krampus events be banned? Have you ever attended a Krampus event? And if so, what did you think of it? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, like, sign up for notifications, and spread the word about this channel. I especially need subscriptions, so I hope you will hit the subscribe button. Also, tell me in the comments if there are other cases you want me to explore. Your support means the world to me, and I hope you'll return to view the next video in the Tamworth Grice Files. Until then, this is Tamworth Grice signing off. Stay wonderful, stay weird, and have beautiful dreams.